My father declared that 80% of my earnings would belong to my sister, while he would take the remaining 20%. It was just that straightforward. I chuckled and informed him that I would be taking 100% and departing, leaving them to manage their own expenses. It was as simple as that. My name is Tyler. I'm 27, and up until recently, my existence was a suffocating loop. It wasn't merely the fatigue from working excessive hours at a job with barely livable wages, it was the burden of a family that, rather than offering support, drained me completely as if I were a cash dispenser. I was raised in a humble part of town, the type where the walls between houses are paper thin and the neighbors are privy to more of your business than you'd prefer. My mother, Esther, left to work overseas when I was 15. As a nurse, the chance to make a much better salary in Europe was an offer she felt she couldn't refuse. She swore it was only for a short time, that she'd save enough to provide us with a superior life before coming home. But the years slipped by, and while she did send funds intermittently, her visits grew increasingly rare. In the beginning, the ache of her absence was a physical pain in my chest. With time, however, I adjusted to living with that void. My father, Gustavo, and my younger sister, Kayla, remained with me, and I unwittingly became the cornerstone of our home. At 18, immediately after graduating from high school, I entered the workforce. There was no money for college, and the bills needed to be paid by someone. My first position was at a packaging plant, a loud, sweltering environment where I spent 8 hours a day taping boxes for minimum wage. It wasn't a prestigious job, but it was what I could get. On every payday, I would surrender nearly my whole paycheck to my father. He claimed it was for household upkeep, rent, utilities, and food. I never challenged him, it was what was expected of me. I was the man of the house, the one designated for sacrifice. But one thing always felt profoundly wrong. Kayla, my sister who was then 23, contributed absolutely nothing to the household. Not a single cent. She had a part-time job at a boutique, but her entire income went toward outings with her friends, designer apparel, and entry fees for nightclubs. While I would return home with aching feet and my clothes steeped in the smell of sweat, she would arrive perfectly made up and beaming, regaling us with tales of her nights out. If I ever asked for her help with a simple chore like washing dishes, she would roll her eyes and dismiss me, saying, "Oh, Tyler, don't be such a buzzkill. You're here to do that stuff." My father, lounging on the sofa with a beer, would just laugh and defend her. "Let her be," he'd say. "She's young. She has plenty of time for responsibilities later." My father was a different issue entirely. He had been a mechanic before my mother left, but he quit his job once her remittances started arriving. He would claim there was no point in working himself to the bone for a meager wage when Esther could provide for us. Yet, when my mother's financial support became less reliable, he made no effort to find another job. He instead mastered the art of spending my money. I would often come home to find him in the yard with his buddies, surrounded by a sea of empty beer bottles, their raucous laughter competing with blaring music. One evening, I counted over 20 bottles. And who funded this? I did, with my salary and my long hours of labor. I made several attempts to speak with him. "Dad, I need you to contribute something." "I can't shoulder all the costs alone." His response, delivered with a taunting grin, was always the same. "Tyler, you're young and strong. I've put in my time. It's my turn to relax and enjoy myself." "And your sister?" "She's my little princess. I won't have her slaving away at a job like you." Then he would laugh as though my existence were some kind of joke. There were moments when I'd come home, utterly spent, only to see Kayla heading out in a brand new dress or my father cracking open another beer, and a fire of rage would ignite within me. I always suppressed it, not by choice, but because of a promise my mother had extracted from me before she departed. "Tyler, look after your father and your sister. Don't let them be alone. You're the man of the house now." Like a fool, I treated those words as gospel. Every time I felt on the verge of erupting, I would hear her voice and remind myself, they are my family. I have to bear this. The years churned on, my life a monotonous cycle of work, bills, and degradation. A shift began, however, when after 3 years at the factory, I was promoted to the role of shift supervisor. It wasn't a massive leap, but the pay was slightly better and it allowed me to learn more about the company's inner workings. I discovered I possessed a knack for organization and troubleshooting. My superiors took notice, and a year later, they offered me an office position managing inventory. My salary doubled. Over time, I continued to ascend the corporate ladder. I moved from inventory manager to logistics coordinator, and then to operations manager. Within 5 years, my income was 7 times what it was when I first started. I was earning more money than I had ever dreamed of, but I kept this information from my father and Kayla. I knew that if they learned the truth, they would bleed me dry. I continued to give them the same amount I always had, the equivalent of my old minimum wage earnings, and funneled the rest into a secret savings account. My father remained under the impression that my income hadn't changed, demanding the household money each payday with his typical arrogant flair. "Come on, Tyler. Hand over the money for the house." "Don't keep me waiting." I would just nod, give him the cash, and say nothing. All the while, my savings grew, and with it, a tiny glimmer of hope. Perhaps someday I could escape that house and finally live for myself. Despite my newfound wealth, my home life was static. I slept in the same cramped room on a squeaky bed, with a fan that barely stirred the air. Kayla, meanwhile, occupied the larger bedroom, complete with a new television that I, of course, had purchased. My father's drunken get-togethers continued unabated, and I'd return home to the familiar scene of him on the couch, beer in hand, surrounded by his friends. "Tyler, grab me another one from the fridge," he would sometimes command without so much as a glance in my direction. And I, ever the fool, would comply. But it wasn't easy. Even with money in the bank, I couldn't bring myself to leave. The vow I made to my mother felt like an unbreakable chain. Whenever I contemplated moving out, her words would resonate in my mind, "Don't leave them alone." And though I was loath to admit it, a part of me clung to the hope that things might change, that my father might one day see me as more than an ATM, or that Kayla might finally recognize that I deserved respect. That day never came. The day my world finally broke apart began like any other. It was a Friday, and my bi-weekly paycheck had been deposited. As was my habit, I printed the deposit slip for my own records, but I made a critical error. I left it sitting on my desk, exposed. I usually tuck these documents away in a folder hidden beneath my mattress, but on that day, exhaustion made me careless. When I returned from work, I discovered Kayla in my room, holding the slip, her eyes as wide as dinner plates. "This is what you make," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of astonishment and avarice. "Tyler, you're earning a fortune and you've been giving us scraps. How could you hide this from us?" I tried to remain composed. "Kayla, that's my money. I work for it. Neither of you contributes a thing, yet I still cover every expense in this house. What more could you possibly want?" She scoffed as if my logic were ridiculous. "Your money? We're a family, Tyler. What you earn belongs to everyone. I'm telling Dad." She then dashed out of the room, the pay slip clutched in her hand. I knew a confrontation was imminent, but I was unprepared for its intensity. That evening, my father summoned me to the dining room. He sat in his customary armchair, beer in hand, but his usual smile was gone. His face was flushed with anger. Kayla stood at his side, arms crossed, wearing a look of triumph. "What's this I hear about you earning all this money and giving us the same pittance as always?" my father demanded, waving the slip in the air. "Did you think you could deceive me, Tyler? This is a family. We all support each other here. Why would you conceal this?" I attempted to reason with him. "Dad, that money is from my job. I've been paying this household's bills since I was 18. Kayla gives nothing. And you? You blow my money on beer and parties with your friends. Don't I have a right to keep something for myself?" My father let out a laugh, but it held no warmth. It was a cruel, belittling sound. "A right? Look, Tyler, let me clarify how things are going to be. Your sister has ambitions to attend the most prestigious university in the country. That requires a lot of money. And as for me, I have my own needs. So, from this point forward, 80% of your salary will go to Kayla so she can achieve her dreams. The other 20% will be for me, for my expenses and my social life. It's just that simple. I stared at him, finding it impossible to process what he'd just said. 80% for Kayla, 20% for him. What was for me? The rage I had suppressed for years surged up my throat like lava from a volcano. But instead of shouting, I laughed. I laughed loudly, almost hysterically, as if I'd just been told the funniest joke imaginable. My father and Kayla looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "What are you laughing at?" my father asked, his annoyance palpable. Wiping a tear from my eye, I continued to laugh. "I'm laughing because I am done. I'm done supporting two leeches who call themselves my family. I'm done with your drinking, Dad. I'm done with your partying, Kayla. I'm done with being treated like I am nothing. So, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm leaving with 100% of my salary, and the two of you can start paying your own bills." It's just that simple. My father's expression shifted from rage to sheer disbelief. "What did you just say?" "You don't make the rules here, Tyler. You have a responsibility to this family. You always have, and you always will." "No," I stated, with a newfound calm I didn't know I had. "That's finished." I walked to my room, pulled out a suitcase, and began to pack my belongings, my clothes, my documents, my laptop, everything that belonged to me. My father trailed behind me, shouting that I wasn't leaving, that I couldn't just abandon them. He tried to physically block the doorway, but I was no longer the same Tyler who would lower his head in submission. I pushed him aside and strode out of that house, not once looking back. I moved into an apartment by myself. I bought a large-screen television, a bed with a mattress that didn't creak, and even treated myself to a trip to the coast. It's amazing how it feels to spend your own hard-earned money on yourself without being told you don't deserve it. But the tranquility was not to last. About 3 months later, my phone rang at 10 o'clock at night. It was an unfamiliar number, but a gut feeling told me this was not a random call. I answered, and the voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. It was Kayla, my sister, but she didn't sound like her usual self, with her entitled tone and derisive laugh. She sounded desperate. "Tyler, please, you have to help us," she pleaded, her voice quivering. "We're about to be evicted. We don't have the rent money. Dad and I have no idea what to do." I was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. One part of me wanted to hang up immediately, but another part, the one that vividly recalled the years of humiliation, wanted to hear more. "Evicted," I repeated in a cold, flat tone. "And how is that my concern? I don't live there. That's for you two to sort out." "No, wait," she yelled, on the brink of tears. "We're broke. My salary isn't enough. And Dad hasn't been able to find much work. Please, Tyler. You're our last resort. If we don't pay this month, they're going to put us on the street." I laughed. I couldn't stop myself. It was a harsh, dry laugh, filled with all the resentment I had harbored for years. "Your salary isn't enough? That's funny, Kayla. When you were spending it all on parties, clothes, and clubs, you never seemed to worry about the rent. Now, all of a sudden, I'm your savior? Where was this desperation when you were treating me like your personal ATM? Please, Tyler, this isn't the time for that," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I know I wasn't the best sister, but we need you. We're your family. You can't just abandon us like this." Before I could reply, I heard another voice. It was my father, Gustavo, having snatched the phone from Kayla. "Tyler, you listen to me," he bellowed with the deep voice he always used to assert his authority. This time, however, something was different. It wasn't just anger, it was desperation. "You think you can just wash your hands of us and leave us homeless? You're a selfish brat. We gave you a roof over your head, food, a family. And now that you're making a fortune, you turn your back on us. That's not how a real man behaves. The rage swelled in my chest again, but it was accompanied by a strange sense of calm. For the first time, I wasn't intimidated. A roof, food, a family. I said, nearly spitting the words. Let's be clear, Dad. For years, I paid for that roof. I paid for that food. I paid for the electricity, the water, and even your damn beers. And what did you give me in return? Constant ridicule. You're meant to enjoy life, Tyler, not work. Kayla is my princess, leave her alone, and now you dare to call me selfish. No, Dad. You're the selfish one, living off my salary while you got drunk with your friends. Kayla is the selfish one, laughing at me while I worked myself to death. Don't you talk to me like that, Tyler, he interrupted, but his voice lacked its usual force. You have money. A lot of it. We saw the check. You could save us. Your sister wants to go to college. She wants a future. Don't you care about that? I laughed again, louder this time. College? The prestigious university you wanted me to fund with 80% of my salary, while you took the other 20% for your drinking sprees. Do you remember that, Dad? Because I certainly do. You told me, it's that simple. Well, now I'm telling you, get jobs, pay your own bills, and survive. It's that simple. Don't you dare speak to me that way, he roared, but he sounded less like a man in charge and more like a cornered animal. You'd be nothing without us. We raised you. We gave you everything. Gave me everything? I said, my voice turning to ice. The only thing you gave me was a promise that chained me to you. Mom told me not to leave you alone. That's why I stayed, enduring your insults, your laughter, your constant reminders that I was worthless. But you know what? That check you saw, the money you're so desperate for, is the result of my sacrifice, my sleepless nights, my overtime, my promotions. It's not yours, it's not Kayla's, it's mine. And you're not getting another cent. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Then, Kayla was back on the phone, sobbing. Tyler, please. We don't have anyone else. If we get evicted, I don't know what we'll do. I'm begging you. We're your family. Family, I said, the word burning my throat. A family doesn't exploit you. A family doesn't mock you while they drain you financially. A family doesn't make you feel worthless. You are not my family. You are parasites. And sooner or later, parasites have to learn to survive on their own. You can't do this to us, she cried, but I had already stopped listening. I ended the call, and for the first time in years, the crushing weight on my chest began to lift. It wasn't just anger I felt. It was a sense of justice. It was the deep satisfaction of knowing that after everything they had put me through, they were finally facing the consequences of their own choices. A few weeks later, my mother, Esther, called me. Her voice was thick with reproach, as if I were the villain. Tyler, I am so disappointed in you. How could you just abandon your family? Your father and sister are in a terrible situation, and you, with all your money, just left them. They couldn't pay the rent, and the landlord evicted them without mercy. This is your fault. I tried to explain everything to her with what little patience I had left. I recounted Gustavo's drinking habits, how he frittered away my salary on beer while I was barely getting any sleep. I described how Kayla taunted me while spending her own money on parties. I told her about the endless humiliations, the laughter, the way they made me feel completely invisible. But she refused to listen. They are your family, she insisted, using the same tone she always did to make me feel guilty. You are supposed to be there for them, regardless of what they've done. Not anymore, Mom, I replied, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. I'm not going to carry them any longer. If you want to help them, go ahead. But I am done. I hung up the phone. Since that conversation, I haven't spoken to her again. I don't know if she will ever grasp my perspective, but I no longer care. I had severed the final connection to that toxic family. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly free, and I had no plans to ever look back. Sometime later, I learned that Gustavo had become a taxi driver, working long, hot shifts just to make enough to get by. Kayla, meanwhile, had to contribute her entire paycheck to cover the bills for a much smaller house they had rented. The parties, the designer clothes, and the nightclubbing were all gone, replaced by the stark reality they had always avoided. A year has passed, and my life is entirely my own. I'm now a regional manager at my company, earning a salary that allows me to travel and save for my own home. My apartment is filled with things that represent who I am: books, a bicycle, and photographs from my journeys. Freedom tastes like the coffee I drink on my balcony in the morning, a morning without yelling or feelings of guilt. As I look out over the city from my window, I know that I am beholden to no one. I am living for myself. The rage has transformed into peace, and the quest for justice has ended in freedom. They are dealing with their consequences, and I am finally free.